The year was 1980. Meet Michael Chapdelaine. He was one of just 12 guitarists picked for a masterclass with the legendary Andres Segovia. What happened next became one of classical guitar's favorite stories. In Segovia's world, there was one simple rule: play his music, play it his way. But Chapdelaine decided to ignore Segovia's fingerings that day. You can guess how that went.
One moment. You give me this. Is the transcription my transcription? But you modify all the fingering. Why?
Just decisions I made.
My transcription, play my transcription. Otherwise, go to another person that made better captation than I. Fuera.
We love these stories. Tales of the demanding genius, the keeper of tradition. They're almost comforting. Even Chapdelaine himself later spoke of the experience with reverence. But I think these aren't just quirky stories from the past. These masterclass videos, with their unwavering certainty and authoritarian approach, shape how countless guitarists think about teaching and learning. They whisper to us that there's only one right path to mastery. The real question isn't if Segovia was too harsh that day. It's how many teachers since then have channeled that same rigid certainty, thinking they're honoring some sacred traditions. Are the best players really the best teachers? Segovia and his peers weren't just being difficult for difficulty's sake, of course. They saw themselves on a crusade, saving the guitar from being just an irrelevant parlor instrument. Whether that was even true is another question, but they certainly believed it. Their rigid approach was armor. Back then, classical music was meant to be hierarchical and strict. A one-sided master-apprentice relationship. To fit in, many guitarists embraced this ideal, perhaps going overboard in the process. Julian Bream's BBC masterclasses have huge followings online too. While he never lashed out like Segovia, these lessons still follow that same prescriptive approach, really.
No, that's not rhythmical. Now, what you remember what I said to Dan?
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, you take a big breath.
No, not a big one. No.
They assume all a student needs is to start fresh and follow a detailed manual, step-by-step instruction. We know from Bream's private students and his later commentaries that his actual teaching style was far less rigid. The setting itself explains this disconnect, I think. Bream, like Segovia, understood media perfectly. With TV cameras in the room, he would have taught for the viewers, not for the student. Real teaching, of course, getting into the nitty-gritty, conducting, guiding students with embodied methods to discover solutions naturally. That wouldn't make for very compelling television. With Bream, we can somewhat excuse this, but what about Segovia? Many of his long-term students praise him both as an artist and as a teacher. But can we take this at face value? The incentive to highlight a connection to Segovia is just too valuable. Dozens of players claim to be the true heir of Segovia, because just adding that to a concert bio instantly boosts your career. Proof? Just look at YouTube. If you mention Segovia in a title or a thumbnail, you get a lot more views. Segovia was wildly successful, so everything he did must be worth copying, right? This is exactly where gratitude for his achievements becomes harmful. Even his devoted followers occasionally mention his demand for absolute stylistic obedience, and even in private lessons. Perhaps the most revealing critique comes from the student Segovia praised most highly, his prince of guitar, John Williams. Despite his massive success under Segovia's endorsement, Williams later took the extraordinary step of publicly rejecting his mentor's methods. He even called them dictatorial, saying they stifled individual expression rather than nurturing it. Williams' rebellion went beyond teaching methods. His musical journey, diving into rock, jazz, and world music traditions, represented everything Segovia fought against. The rift grew so deep that Segovia privately called his former star pupil a traitor to the instrument. But Williams' experience offers us something far more valuable than just another dramatic Segovia story. It reveals an alternative path, one shaped by his first and most influential teacher, his father Len Williams. John has described how his father's approach was fundamentally different, psychologically astute, adaptive, and centered on the student's individual growth rather than rigid tradition. The contrast between these two teachers perfectly illustrates the core problem in classical guitar. One approach molds students to fit a predetermined ideal. The other treats learning as a journey of discovery with the teacher as a guide. This isn't simply about old versus new teaching styles either. Even a century ago, many teachers were taking different and successful approaches. We make a dangerous assumption in music education, that excellence in playing automatically means excellence in teaching. This belief is so widespread that conservatories often hire based on performance credentials rather than teaching ability. The reality is of course far more complex. What makes someone a brilliant performer? They've developed a deep, intuitive understanding through thousands of practice hours, often with very supportive teachers. But this very mastery can actually hinder their teaching. When you've never had to consciously break down how you achieve something, understanding someone else's struggles becomes nearly impossible. Paradoxically, teachers who faced more challenges in their own development often make better instructors. Their journey of overcoming obstacles gives them invaluable insight into the learning process. They remember what it feels like to be stuck, to be confused, to need different approaches to the same concept. This experience is pure gold in teaching. And a rather extreme example, an Olympic gold medal swimmer might glide through water like they were born in it. Yet the same champion might be terrible at helping others overcome their fear of water. Fear of water has of course nothing to do with competitive swimming talent, but without personalized, thoughtful support, people never discover their true potential. The authoritarian approach would be to just throw everyone in the deep end, but this only selects for those lucky enough not to drown. I'm not dismissing elite performers in education. Their artistry and expertise push boundaries forward, but we need to recognize a crucial truth. Performing and teaching are separate skills that rarely peak in the same person. Great teaching demands its own dedicated practice and development. It's not just a side effect of being amazing at playing. When we watch some of these masterclass videos, what we're actually seeing is more of a performance of teaching, not teaching itself. Don't get me wrong, well-done masterclasses can massively energize. They offer high-risk, high-reward moments for players to test themselves under pressure, if they're ready. For us watching, they're insightful and entertaining, but they shouldn't shape our idea of everyday teaching, the kind that creates genuine growth. That often looks far less impressive. It's repetitive, experimental, sometimes messy and deeply personalized. It requires teachers to read students psychologically, adapt constantly, and change course when their usual approaches hit a wall. And crucially, to stop blaming the students when things don't go as planned. If I had to boil it down to one vital attribute, the highest goal of teaching should be enabling students to surpass the teacher's skills, and quickly. Only then will we actually advance the instrument. Though I wonder how many guitarists are actually comfortable with that idea. So, was Segovia actually a bad teacher? It depends entirely on what you expect from teaching, of course. Prescriptive methods function as filters. They select players who already fit the desired mold, or those resilient enough to endure the pressure without losing themselves. It's hard to imagine Segovia building a master player from scratch, even if his grueling tour schedule had allowed it. You could say purely prescriptive methods are like pruning a garden into a monoculture. Even if you end up with magnificent flowers, if it's all the same flower, they will eventually wilt away, leaving nothing but barren soil. Make sure your teacher's voice is not the only one on your guitar journey, especially if you're your own teacher. Join Tonebase for an incredible treasure trove of insight into all things classical music. While Tonebase started out as a guitar platform, it is nowadays hosting 10 different instruments. If you get a guitar subscription now, you get access to hundreds of high-quality lessons, live streams, a vibrant community of fellow musicians, practice plans, and so much more. Check it out for a free 14-day trial. Link is in the description. Thank you for watching. Let us know in the comments what you think about this topic. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Jakob Schmidt for Tonebase. Cheers and see you next time.